And pledge, all hail Gina Miller. We have a real political heroine in town. Gina Miller is officially my new girl crush. Sorry, Rachel, you've got some competition. This week, the businesswoman turned anti-Brexit campaigner successfully challenged the government's £1 billion deal with the DUP, prompting the government to say there will be a parliamentary vote to approve it. Miss Miller has been criticised harshly as a London elitist opposing the democratic will of the people. I see her as an example of a private citizen acting on the gift of democracy bequeathed to us by heroes of history who have won us the right and responsibility to challenge our government. Now, for most of us, buying votes sounds a little bit dodgy. So what we do is we exercise our right to free speech down the pub or scream at the TV proclaiming politics is a sham. But this lady doesn't just complain, she makes a claim. Yes, she's an individual with the means to fund legal action, but she still serves as an example to all campaigners using whatever means at their disposal to challenge the government. And based on her success to date, in my book, Gina Miller represents the people's opposition. Let's be more like Gina Miller, I say.
Panel.
Yes.
Prepare yourself for a shock.
What? Oh, OK, where are we going?
I've had a complete volte-face for Gina Miller. I'm a fully signed-up member.
I feel cheated.
Get Nursey for Afro.
No, we need a round of applause for this, please.
I have to say...
What's going on? Are you drinking? Is that vodka?
Yes, I certainly need vodka. You talked about the democratic will of the... It is worth remembering that the people, 52% of whom, and she chose to try and derail. But having said that, I think I do have an anarchic streak. And I think the fact that clearly what she did as regards the Brexit vote got legal ground and was considered, and it should be.
And it should be.
And I rather like the idea, as you said, that we live in a country, and the callers to my show are furious with me about this.
Are they
that in this week I've completely changed my position.
Wow.
I quite like the fact that one woman, clearly very committed, clearly very bright, and also, God bless her with a few quid, good luck to her, good luck to her, can actually stop the whole process of what, should we put politely, was a rather shoddy deal.
It was fun,
I'm signed up.
I'm signed up.
I mean, if she hadn't started straight after the referendum, so that she upset, you know, those of you who voted. If she hadn't started, actually, she'd have been on your side from the beginning, because she's basically a libertarian. She's basically saying, let's define what is the job of government. It's not really Parliament, it's government. Let's decide what's the job of government, let's decide what's the job of Parliament, and let's decide that they can't go beyond those powers. That's all she's saying, it seems to me, on everything, and I agree with her entirely. I mean, I look at myself as I've got old and I thought, I'm this rather strange sort of person who's a bit left-wing but also a libertarian. I don't want government telling me what I can do and what I can't do.
With no checks and balances.
With no checks and balances. And that's what she's fighting for. So I think we should all join her party.
Trouble is, it won't get anywhere. The deal, she'll force a vote, which is great. But she has sort of held them to account, hasn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
She has. I mean, what she appears to be much better at doing than our
MPs.
Our legislature is seeing where you could drive a coach and horses through current legislation. And she spotted that actually Theresa May was not entitled to trigger Article 50 without a vote in Parliament. Thank goodness. Obviously, the vote in Parliament was a foregone conclusion, sadly. She has also seen that you can't hand £1 billion to keep yourself in government to the Northern Irish party. By the way, which seems to the DUP, which seems to be rather a poor investment. As now the DUP are voting against her when it comes to public sector pay and voting with the Labour Party.
What's going on?
I presume they haven't got the £1 billion yet.
Well,
not yet.
It hasn't come through
yet. It's got to go through Parliament.
I think we've got quite a proud history of individuals being able to hold the government to account. I mean, that's how separation of powers is meant to work. You know, that's why we have an independent judiciary. I think it is healthy, but the only concern I have is that I think it is a lot for one person to carry. I mean, I know she's not literally on her own, but my worry is it becomes too easy for the opponents of her legal actions to kind of demonise her, and she becomes the personification of, in their view, this kind of blob that wants to prevent Brexit. You know, I mean, the abuse that she got after the Article 50 case was terrifying, and it did make me think: is it sustainable for one person to become the face of this huge... I mean, she represents many of us, but she's not elected. She doesn't have a movement behind her.
Could you set out, actually, how unfairly she is treated in some right-wing tabloids?
Appalling.
And the fact that tabloids that some of us work for accuse her of being a Brexit blocker, when all she is
Greg's
actually
got to give up working for the Daily Mail, I
is upholding the rule of law and the rights of Parliament.
So, June, where I join you in your girl crush is I fear we're going to have to part, because I would imagine the next person of whom I speak you had a bit of a boy crush on.
Who?
I refer to Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, of course, I thought you might, who entered into the debate last week with an interview and also with the work of one of his commissions. And he said, quotes, "There is a wide open space in British politics. A politics we're now enthralled to Brexit. That space can be filled only by a strategy which recognises that there is no diversion possible from Brexit without addressing the grievances which gave rise to it. Here's the key. Paradoxically, we have to respect the referendum vote to change it."
Yeah.
Well, again, 52%, that's what they want. What is Tony Blair trying to achieve? Your ex-boy crush or whatever, what's he trying to achieve?
Well, I think the thing is, what he's trying to achieve is to give people the opportunity to change their mind if they want to.
But you honestly think...
If they want to.
And he also talks about coming up with a new border arrangement and going back to the EU, and then the EU allowing us a sort of associate membership. Why would they
I think
do that,
right
June?
now we need to look at all options where Brexit is concerned. I think we need to make sure all options are on the table and we find out what the best solution is.
But what's in it for the EU? If you see a recalcitrant member behave like this, then they come back, courtesy of Tony Blair or whoever is the honest broker...
What's in it for the EU is they didn't want us to leave in the first place.
Well, what is also
and actually, we're talking about Gina Miller here.
Yeah.
What is also in it for the EU is that they do sell more goods to us than we sell to them.
Yeah.
So they'll want, in the end, some sort of proper trading agreement.
Precisely.
I mean, my issue with Tony Blair's intervention is that it seems to boil down to him saying, look, guys, the real problem isn't actually EU migration, it's Commonwealth immigration, and that this isn't going to be affected by that.
That's a good point.
And I mean, ironically, Gina Miller sometimes described as a first-generation immigrant, you know, from a Commonwealth country.
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable with this idea that demonising immigrants from outside the EU is kind of the way to win people over to reversing Brexit, you know. So in a way, to me, that's kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I'm not a great fan of Mr. Blair for
I know
all sorts of reasons. But I have to say, I listened to the interviews he gave last week and I agreed with him on almost everything.
Yeah.
I thought that actually, if only we had had Blair Mark I, you know, Blair pre-Iraq.
Pre-Iraq,
you'd never have had a referendum. But more than that, even if he'd been leading the Labour Party at that time...
He could have swayed the country. In his pocket, he could have swayed
the country. It's just a tragedy that the only person who can effectively do that actually has got no credibility because of Iraq.
Well, it's funny, back to what Rachel and Afa was saying about the abuse that Gina has received. We've got a clip here of her talking about it.
Sexual, racial violence and threats and death threats, etc., that have come via phone calls, emails, letters to my office. My staff have been bombarded. My family have now been threatened. There's even a bounty on my head now.
I mean, it's terrible.
Tremendous interview. I mean, I've had the pleasure of interviewing her. She's a very, very bright woman. And as I say,
put her on the plinth and Nelson.
Yeah, I'm up for that. That works for me.
No, I don't think I'd
say, take Nelson down.
Take Nelson down. Replace him with Gina.
I was really hoping we would have a Nelson free week, guys.
That space is held for Nigel Farage.
Okay.